S'il vous plaît.
The title comic release is really defined as something humorous coming out of a tragedy or a disaster, kind of form a contrast, and also to give you a release from all of the strong emotions.
A lot of people drawn to this language because of its ability to deal with a lot of different subjects.
Works from different artists on different themes. We have autobiographical comics, we have testimonial pieces, we have fantasy in a certain way, we have all different stage of expression.
And I mean, every single one is an example of someone searching for some sort of identity. So, or examining their own identity, or just working through kind of questions about it.
It's just a phenomenal creative outpouring within work like this.
One of the theses of the show was that many of these artists in all media are using comic imagery and recognizable comic characters to deal with difficult subjects. Sexual politics, violence, the loss of innocence, racial identity. We found that this was happening in contemporary art internationally, that cartoons have become an international language that overcomes any kind of barrier, because ever since television, Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, cartoon characters, Batman have become fairly universal. Children need some kind of catharsis because childhood can be very difficult and there can be terrors associated with, and children need an ability to work it out, and in fact we all do. You need a relief. You need a way to step back and look at life a little more ironically, or you just give up.
I want to show how comic art on the wall of the museum has a new perspective, because normally the process of digesting the artistic piece is totally different than when it's in a comic books. And it's, for me, it was a kind of very interesting experiment, because in one hand we have all these art pieces in a dialogue or in a confrontation maybe with these comic pieces where the art is so tiny and so intense in every frame, and it's this kind of different dialogue where I want to push and I want to make the people think about it and show us that comics has that ability to express political thoughts and ideological thoughts in a new dimension that sometimes other mediums can. A completely different perspective when we see the page on the wall and when we see the comic book as an object. And here's a good example with Charles Bond piece. We see the cover of Black Hole number 10, and we see it as a piece in the process of being done, and we see it in black and white, and we see that it's a very strong piece of art that can be totally isolated from the comic book itself. And on the other hand, we see the comic book where the page is done with color and has a totally different sense. Also, the size is different, and the use, you know, how you use it as a normal object is totally different, and how the wall is giving.
If you can imagine it, you know, there's been a zine made about it. there's a portion of this culture that kind of relates to everyone because anyone and everyone can do it. The initial start and the initial kind of, it was just talking to all my friends who made zines, and then kind of growing from there through, who they liked and who they knew about, who they had kind of met in the process of making zines and kind of sharing them, and just the kind of dealing with that culture through generous donations from all the zine artists or trades or whatever. But this identity, this kind of whole demeanor of all those characters, those people exist, and they're my friends, and so, Dan Close just writes about his friends, and they're these just, names are different, but they're just his friends, and so all the people within the culture were like, this is awesome, this is a good story about our lives. There you go. All those kind of obsessive, kind of geeky, in their basement culture thing is just kind of reached this status within, at least right now, within our pop culture. It's starting to become this. Yeah.
And it's that's sort of a good thing and a bad thing. It's sort of like the voracious nature of popular culture and how we live. We want more and more and more, and this becomes a real collectible thing.
Absolutely.
And it's sort of, the negative side is that the high culture people are really almost bringing it in. It's like, oh boy, here's an energizing. And that's not what we wanted to do here. We wanted to show the energy across all these different kinds of lines. In my mind, whenever you kind of have problems with words, like how do you distinguish the difference between a graphic novel, a zine, and a sculpture or a painting, and you don't have the right words? It shows that paradigms are shifting. And all of this in terms of identity. Who am I? Which is one of the most basic questions that we ask and we continue to ask throughout our whole lives, so that it really is very personal for us, and I think of it in a way of trying to find truth. And I find truth about myself and how I think in literature, in art, in zines. And it's sort of like, oh, somebody else feels that way. And, oh, they can express it even if I can't.
S'il vous plaît. S'il vous plaît.